Good day, everyone. Welcome to Chop It Up with Attorney Linda Bernard. Also, Detroit Police Commissioner Linda Bernard. It's a pleasure having you join us today on WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the nation and the world. You can watch us, listen to us, follow us on YouTube, all of the social media platforms, Facebook, all of the others that I don't usually use, TikTok, etc. But it's a pleasure having you join us today. My guest is a young lady who obviously is not only flamboyant but beautiful. And when we talk today, you will find out how smart she is, which is even more important. Her name is Jesus. Pardon me, I call it Jesus when it's a man. Jesus Washington. Jesus, welcome to Chop It Up today.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. I
Oh,
really appreciate it.
You're welcome. You bring joy to me. Just your colors, your smile, your enthusiasm, your energy is so positive. It's a real pleasure having you on today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I love to always bring out positive energy, make people smile.
Oh, well, you smile anyway, but but anyway, Jesus, that's an interesting name. Can you tell me when and why your parents named you Jesus?
Okay, well, I went through a spiritual journey in the past 3 years, and I was going through clarity and finding out the truth. And I grew up a Muslim, and I was born in Bethlehem, but I knew there was
born
something
in Bethlehem.
I was born
where
in Bethlehem,
Jesus was born.
where Jesus was born.
Right.
But I was
in a stable, actually, they say.
Yeah. But they never took me to where Jesus was born. They never took me where Jesus was crucified. None of that. I never got to see that, even though I was born there.
How long were you living there after you were born?
8 years.
Oh, so you were 8 years old. So you would have remembered and
I would have remembered.
Could have enjoyed it. Well,
Absolutely.
I mean, had the experience. We're big enough to understand the experience.
Absolutely.
But your parents didn't take you?
No.
Did they move out of Bethlehem, or what did your parents do?
So basically, the father was a mechanic.
Okay.
And my mother was she had a transportation business for driving. It was a driving school business.
Oh, good. So even she was Muslim, but she was allowed to drive, because in some Muslim countries you're not allowed to. Were not allowed.
But that took time for her to fight for her rights to drive.
Oh, really?
And I grew up and I saw that, because women's rights in the Muslim home, honestly, men are put on a platform and women are basically secondhand.
Okay, so they have to have permission from their husbands to drive?
You have to have permission for everything.
Give me an example, for example.
For example, she can't leave the house without, she can't just go do her.
Really?
Yeah, you can't just have the
all of her 24 hours a day are accounted for through her husband?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Total control.
Was there a particular, I don't understand the Muslim religion entirely, but was there a sect that said that are there different, denominations with being a Muslim? There are different denominations being a Christian. I'm Catholic, but you could be a Baptist, you could be a this, you could be a that. Are there different denominations? Excuse me.
Yes, definitely. There's different denominations in the Muslim religion, and not all Muslims. Some Muslims now are more liberal, and they go with what's going on in this world now. But a lot of them are still set back, with the old ways and old cultures where the freedom is just not there.
So you studied the Quran as a child, then?
Yeah, I only went to private schools all my life.
So how did you learn English in school while you were a child?
So when
Bethlehem?
In Bethlehem, my first language was Arabic. My second language was French.
French.
Yeah, because I went to
Parlez-vous français?
Yeah.
A little.
I forgot it.
I'll have to go to a French restaurant with you sometime. Go ahead, so you can order for me.
I forgot all French. I have to relearn it.
I don't know anything other than coq au vin. That's about it, which I like, actually. So go ahead. I'm sorry. So you were, when you were born, you only spoke Arabic.
Yeah.
Come on in, Adam.
How's it going?
Pretty good.
Yes.
And have a seat. Our Senator Adam Hollier has just joined us. Again, now, Adam, thank you. It's nice being here today. Excuse these glasses. I have an eye infection, so
No
it's like
worries.
sort of awful. But anyway,
Sorry I was late. It's little kid soccer day and then ballet switch and all those kind of things.
that's right. You have a daughter.
I have
Right.
a 4-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old son.
Oh, congratulations to you. I
Thanks.
didn't know you had a son. Your material mentions your daughter.
Yeah, pandemic style. He's
Okay.
only a year and a half old.
Okay, and I like that shirt, ladies and gentlemen.
yeah.
And let me introduce you to Jesus Washington.
Very nice to meet
Very
you.
nice.
She was
meeting
born
you
in
as well.
Bethlehem, which means a
okay.
lot to all of us as
Mhm.
Christians and so forth. And she lived there for 8 years. She speaks Arabic and French and English and is a United States citizen.
Awesome.
Adam is a very distinguished gentleman. And right now, as you can see from his shirt, it says the A team. I like that. A team Holier. Adam is a candidate for the United States Congress for the seat that was once held by John Conyers.
Yes, I read his biography before you came through,
Awesome.
and I read everything about you and all the things that you're doing and all the changes that you're making here in Michigan. And it's very, very nice what you do. It's very beautiful. To make a change.
Yes, he's bright. He's extraordinarily well educated. Went to Cornell.
I did.
I did a 3 weeks at a seminar there. I got my master's in law from the University of Pennsylvania from
Oh, okay.
Penn. I was
Mhm.
their first African American to earn a master's in law. But anyway, so I know Cornell, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place. It's in upstate New York.
Yes.
It's lots of hills and mountains and very cold in the winter. I was there.
Yes, it is.
I was there with Professor Irving Younger, which is one of your most distinguished faculty of all time. So, yeah. But so it's so good to see you. And then you have a master's degree in urban planning, as I recall,
from Michigan. Yep.
from University of Michigan.
Mhm.
But I'm not a go blue girl. I'm a go green girl. I didn't go there, but I don't. Only reason I'm not is because I intensely dislike your football coach.
Harbaugh?
I can't stand it. And I mean, and
a lot of people feel that way.
It's not a lot. I don't want to digress because I want to talk about you and your campaign and you and your business. But on my mother and my father, I was watching the Michigan game against. I was at the Michigan Ohio State game, but I was watching Michigan against Alabama.
Mhm.
I'm in Birmingham, and a guy sitting next to me, white guy, the ordinary guy, is a cigar bar,
Mhm.
and he's smoking a cigar. We're talking and everything. He says to me, he used to be the head of finance for the Baltimore Ravens, which is where Harbaugh played. No. He was the head of finance.
Oh, okay.
This guy was.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Harbaugh was recruited by the Ravens to play there. Our Harbaugh, not
okay.
John, Jim, the one that's at the University of Michigan. And he said, and he'd been in football before he was even with the Ravens for 19 years, Adam. And he said that he was the most hated quarterback in the history of the Ravens. He said no one in the locker room liked him. And and they said that the two men were totally, there's a Jim Harbaugh and there's a John Harbaugh.
Mhm.
And now John, of course, is the coach for the Baltimore Ravens.
Right.
Gets along very well with Lamar Jackson. I'm talking this football talk because he played football. A defensive back, I believe.
was a safety. Yep.
A safety, right. So yeah. So he was there the whole time. And he said that John was as different from your Jim Harbaugh at the University of Michigan as night and day. Everybody loved John. And they still do, and they loved his father. John is named after their father's named John Harbaugh. I learned all this just sitting here talking to this guy. And he said, Linda, you have no idea. No one liked him. The whole locker room was against him. And you know what that's like if the locker room was against the quarterback.
Not a good deal.
Not a good deal at all. And therefore he could never be successful as a player because of his own personal everything. So I just want you to know that my dislike is consistent with that of the Ravens. It's consistent with that of everybody who ever played with him. and I just think he's extremely racist. I've always felt that way. But okay, enough of football. You want to talk about the A team Hollier. Why don't you tell me about that?
Well, what do you want to know? I mean, we're very excited about this year. Obviously, I'm running for Congress in the new 13th congressional district. It's the district that I've lived in my entire life, and even through a couple of redistrictings, I've always lived in the 13th congressional district. But I live, right down the street in the North End, where I'm raising my two little people, and where my parents and grandmother and everybody still live. And I think as we talk about these moments in time, it's really important that we have people who can go to DC and honor the legacy that we've had as Detroiters, but also who can build something for folks who are moving forward. And Congress is a game of seniority. And,
It is totally.
We
just like marriage. The more seniority a woman has in the marriage, I mean, if you have less than 10 years, then, and I say that as a lawyer, you're kind of sunk. But if you've got more than 10 years, you've got the pension, you've got the Social Security, you got everything. Everything's coming to you. Even if you get a second wife, she gets what the first wife left behind.
Well, my wife and I had just celebrated 10 years, so I'm pretty.
I'm
pretty comfortable.
Well, then you're locked. No, then you're locked in. And she is too. Right.
I was locked in 15 years ago when we started dating.
So isn't that wonderful?
Yeah. So we've been together 15 years uninterrupted and married for 10.
That's wonderful.
And my parents are celebrating their 50-year wedding anniversary this July.
I'm not surprised. When I was did you read about his parents? His father was a fire chief.
Yes, I did read about
and
that,
everything.
yes.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that as a police commissioner. I mean, that is really important to me that he was a hero here in Detroit, and you are a hero for our country and our nation, because you are a former serviceman.
I'm still in. I'm a captain in the Army Reserve. I'm a paratrooper. We had a jump this past weekend.
I was going to ask you, what do you do with that?
I'm a civil affairs officer, so I'm kind of the Army's version of a diplomat, and I'm a paratrooper, so I jump out of perfectly good airplanes a couple times a year. Wow. We got out Saturday. The weather was nice. It was funny. The last couple jumps have been canceled because it was too windy. And then later that day, and we were in Indiana, a church on post, the roof literally was blown off. So it was the day after the big tornado that we had here in Michigan.
That was terrible in Gaylord. I looked at those pictures and so forth. That was a powerful, powerful storm, tornado. It actually was unbelievable in terms of the amount of destruction it did. Very, very quickly, obviously. But I want to congratulate you on that, because I want to thank you for your service to our country, for your service to our community, and obviously your service to the world, because American servicemen and women actually serve the whole world. We are always somewhere doing something for somebody,
and we should be.
And as you can see, I have my nails done for Ukraine. I'm such a supporter of Ukraine. I'm so upset with Putin. I hope all these rumors that we've heard, I don't know if they're true, that he's deathly ill, are absolutely true. Praise the Lord, please, Lord, let him go to the hell where he's gonna go, because he's a terrible, terrible person and a terrible war criminal.
Well, I think the policy that we had as a nation, under the last president of isolationism and supporting strongmen helped us get to this space. I think it's critically important that we talk about our role in the world. And a number of people like to say that America shouldn't be the world's police, but we can be involved and invested, or we cannot be. And it's been shown time and time again that when we withdraw from our role as leaders in the world, and that's not just militarily, right? The military should be the last part of the space. It should be diplomatically. And you see, the kind of cutbacks to the State Department that you saw over the last presidency, the attacks on the intelligence community. That's our arm and ears. Like, we have got to be leaning in and making sure that we address these issues before they become shooting wars.
Well, absolutely. But I didn't have a problem with the rapport that Trump set up, and I thought the media did him a tremendous disservice, actually, with North Korea. And let me tell you why. Because I didn't think, and I'd say this publicly, privately, it doesn't matter, that anyone should disarm because the United States says so. Because look at what happened in Libya. Look at what happened to Saddam. I mean, Saddam was our friend, not our enemy. And you speak Arabic, so you understand it very, very well. I mean, he was not our enemy. We had Four Seasons hotels there, Sheridan's there. It was the jewel of the Middle East. It was. I mean, he was a strong guy, as you say, but he understood his people, and he understood how to deal with the various contingencies.
I mean, I don't know any Iraqi who wouldn't believe that he was terrible to his folks. I mean, that's why we have such a large Chaldean community here in the U.S., because they fled Iraq because of the religious persecution that existed. I mean, he invaded Kuwait. And
but he backed right back out of that. So that was only a skirmish. You know, and I both know that because we went there. Because of Operation Desert Storm.
And because we effectively pushed him back. But if he had the ability to, he would have continued rolling.
But it seemed like he learned his lesson. Go ahead, because you were there. Go ahead.
A lot of people don't understand there's a lot of religions in Iraq. There's like more than 200 religions in Iraq.
Okay.
So imagine this, this president being able to control the whole entire country, having those different types of religions. That's totally powerful. You know what I mean? And it was a separation between the Sunnis and the Shiites and the Chaldeans, which are the Christians. So that was the main, because he treated the Chaldeans really good. If you talk to the Chaldeans, all of them lived a lavish life in Iraq. They really did, and they worked under him and things like that. But the Sunnis and the Shiites, they had a
Those are
problem.
the ones.
They were the ones.
That's certainly not been the experience from the Chaldean folks I know,
Well,
but
they
I'm not
may
from
not
there,
like
so, yeah.
him, but you can see because Saddam was more Western than anything.
Right.
I mean, everything about him was Western. When you think about it, he loved America. He had so much money over here. He did a lot of stuff. I mean, he acquiesced in everything. Had it not been for that war, the Middle East would not be destabilized. And I blame our President Bush for that. Because that was his initiative. But as I was saying about, I mean, when he agreed with America and Saddam got rid of all his nuclear stuff, then here we come, we invaded.
Well, I don't think that's ever been alleged that he had nuclear. The question was about biological, chemical weapons.
Same thing. I mean, something that weapons of mass destruction.
Mhm.
So, and so when he did that, we did the same thing to Gaddafi. Gaddafi was our friend. When Obama was elected, he offered to pay for, not elected, when he was running for office, he said, "I'll pay for your entire campaign." Of course, Obama had to say no, and he couldn't. He said, "Because I view you as my brother. Your father is from our continent." He was trying to unite the countries in Africa, just like we have the United States of America. And what do? We go over there and create total disruption. He is castrated in the street and killed in the street. I mean, if this is what happens to people who go along with the American thing about no nuclear weapons, then hey, I wouldn't give mine up either. Something like what Coleman Young said when he was mayor, when he became the first black mayor, they told him, all the people in the suburbs said, well, Detroit needs to lay down their arms and you need to demand that Detroit lay down their guns and their arms. He said, we will lay down our arms when you lay down yours. You never leave yourself powerless in any situation. And Coleman was serious. They got all kinds of flack about that because it became the 8 Mile rule. 8 Mile rule. He said, when you lay down, your father will tell you, when you lay down your weapons on the other side of 8 Mile, then we'll lay down ours. But we're not laying down ours if you're not laying down yours.
I think that the experiences you're talking about is fairly different about some of these extremely oppressive regimes, which is what you saw out of certainly in North Korea in that space. I mean, there's no question that it's a highly repressive regime.
I understand that, but everything can't be open. Everything is not a democracy. Every group of people are not democratic or don't have that ability. I mean, the only thing that's happening right now in North Korea are all the sanctions that we have against North Korea. That's what's hurting North Korea, hurting their economy, hurting their people, hurting all that stuff. It's the sanctions that are doing it. But in reality, this guy does nothing to us. I mean, he's okay. And I really like the fact, quite frankly, that Trump sat down with him. And during the whole time he was president, he didn't shoot off a single rocket. Think about it.
Yes, he did.
I mean, that was at the beginning before they started talking.
He shot some off right after they had that.
Yeah, no, but they were like baby ones. They weren't anything. They were just, like puffing, like, when a man's trying to act like, he's all that in a bag of chips.
I mean, he shot off plenty of rockets. He did all those kind of things. I mean, his posture didn't change substantially over any of the last presidents.
Actually, it did. When you really look at all the facts, as I at least in terms of the ones that I have reviewed, maybe I haven't seen everything, like you perhaps have, but I'm just saying. In any event, we had peace. We had 4 years of peace. That's the point. We didn't have any wars. I mean, everybody stayed in their lane. North Korea stayed in their lane. We stayed in our lane. Russia stayed in their lane. Everybody stayed in their lane. China is way outside of their lane, but that's our fault, and that's the fault of previous presidents, letting them fill in that big part of the China Sea, create an island, create their naval base. Now they, of course, their Navy's #1 in the world. Ours is #2. I mean, we let that happen. That was way before the last president. But right now, of course, we're trying to address issues right here in Detroit. Mm-hmm. And in the 13th congressional district, and I understand, and I love international debates because, and I like the fact that both of you are, have experience in that regard. So, again, ladies and gentlemen, you're watching WJZZ, Cool TV, the coolest station in the nation and the world. I'm attorney Linda Bernard, and you're watching Chop It Up and also Police Commissioner Linda Bernard, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
So, and you can watch us on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, all of the social media platforms. I saw that you were trying to say something. Then we'll come right back to your campaign. Go right ahead, Jesus.
I wasn't really trying to say anything.
Oh.
But I was listening to the conversation of the different things that you're talking about, and it's very intriguing. Those different conversations. It's very important that we talk about it. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people have lack of information. And a lot of things like when we're talking about like international laws and things like that, it's kind of different. Because people, like, another thing people don't realize that when the Chaldeans came here, they came here out of fear, right? But you don't know the whole entire story of these people, and it's a different conversation between the Arabics and the Chaldeans talking to a Western person, and when they're having the same conversation with the Middle Eastern person. You know what I mean? It's a whole different ballgame, because they know that they're here under a different law, so certain things they cannot say, and that's what people don't understand.
So you think they're less than candid? But
Yes.
even with that, I just look at the business opportunities. I mean, for American businesses, they were
Yes.
doing extraordinarily well. There with Saddam, and Saddam was cool. And if you mess with an American, you would be dead by tomorrow. I mean, he didn't play, which was the way. Well, that's the strong man thing. I got that part, and that doesn't work in all situations. But in some situations, Adam, and as you grow, as you understand, sometimes strong man is necessary, because you sometimes you gotta you got to deal with people the way they know how to deal. You know what I'm trying to say?
I mean, I think that that's not the kind of government or world I'd want to live in. And
I
so
understand that,
I
but
certainly
you
don't.
are an American. But they're what lots of
Yeah.
other people, but they do live under, and they like it. For 1.5 billion Chinese, they do. They're people that don't think like we think,
I think
and and different systems work for different cultures.
so no doubt about that. But I think history has shown that when you talk about strongman government, the reason that it's called that is because it is ruled with fear and strength. It's not ruled because people are committed to that society in a way that is meaningful or exciting. Like I think if folks could leave, they would, and those who have access and opportunities continue to do so. And certainly, there are lots of other forms of government, and certainly it's not to say that our system works best or is the only option. There are lots of other options that work in the world, but some of the places that we're talking about right now, I think, are the worst for regular people.
But you have to understand that what we get fed and so forth are the all the information that is negative, if you as you put it, for regular people. If you don't watch the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, all you get is news tainted with our American way of looking at things. So don't misunderstand. Well, I mean, I'm an American. I love it. My cousin is a 2-star general. His name is Robert Edmondson. I just went to the 2nd-star ceremony. And I can't tell you how much I support America. I got flags on my house, everything.
I think the cool thing about our government is you can be critical of it. You can't be critical of any of the governors governments that we've talked about. And I think that says a lot about what the space is and how they are. It's certainly not to say that our government is perfect. As a Black person in America, like, there are lots of issues that we have to address. I think that we have got to be honest about what these spaces are and ask them and expect them to do better and provide people opportunities, because the reason people want to come to this country is because there are opportunities that they don't have in their spaces.
Right. Oh, I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that part at all. I'm not at all. But I'm just saying, in terms of our history internationally, in terms of our bait and switch with Saddam, with Gaddafi, people who were our friends, were staunch American supporters in every sense of the word. We might not like the way they handled their situation. We don't like the way Xi handles his situation in China. But we didn't move on him to try to change that system. That's what we did in those other cultures, and that's what has created global unrest, cost us billions of dollars, and created what war in the Middle East now.
Well, again, as you talk about Gaddafi, we didn't start what happened. That was unrest amongst his folks, and we just provided cover so that he could not wholesale put it down. This was
all Hillary Clinton. She did this. I mean, this was not our enemy. Why make a pussycat into a lion? Why do that? I mean, who does this? I mean, just think about it.
I think if you look back at Colonel Gaddafi's record, he was a sponsor of terror. He certainly was on the list of state sponsors of terror. the Pan Am flight. I mean, there are lots of issues that I think the people,
I'm talking about in the last 25 years.
well, you don't get
Okay.
to come back from
Oh,
that.
yeah, but really we can. But anyway, let's move on to you and to your campaign. How will you how do you feel that you can make a difference in Congress?
Well, I think the number one issue that we have going forward is housing, right? It's something that we have absolutely got to address. The affordability gap continues to grow. There are very few opportunities for people to make meaningful improvement in their lives, especially when you talk about Detroiters. And our federal housing policy has always played a big role in that, from the original redlining that didn't allow folks access to affordable housing to the opportunity to become homeowners. All of those things still continue today. And you see folks as they're trying to start their business, the overwhelming majority of capitalization for your business comes from the wealth that you have or do not have in your home.
Hasn't this been true forever? And nothing has changed. I mean, how can you change this reality?
We can change federal housing guidelines, right? So we can ensure that there are more opportunities for down payment assistance in communities that have been historically disadvantaged by federal policy.
They have that already.
They do not.
They do have they
have some programs,
right.
But it's certainly not enough. So when you look at what affordable housing would look like in the city of Detroit, more than half the people in the city of Detroit operate at less than the state median income, which makes it a real requirement for us to talk about.
The median income in Detroit is about 33,000. The median income for the state is about 56,000.
Yeah, and so when you talk about that huge disparity, it's the state average is more like the AMI that is necessary for housing because it's done by the Tri-County area. So Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb, when you look at those together, that's what the housing index. So there are a significant number of people who will never be able to afford housing because we aren't building enough in the range that people who actually need it can use.
So what would you do? You would incentivize contractors, or
I would incentivize right. So right now, the reason that we build low-income housing and senior housing is because of their federal programs that allow developers to make money off of doing that.
That's correct.
If there were similar programs that created housing for folks, what we would call worker housing or essential housing, that people who make between $25,000 and $60,000 or $70,000 could afford, then people would be able to have an opportunity for stable rental and home ownership, which they do not currently have. And that is because federal policy does not create an avenue for those things.
Well, as a senator in Michigan, did you initiate any of those policies there?
So again, the challenge is so much of it comes down to our federal guidelines. So we can move dollars.
But they're state money.
But we don't have anywhere near what would be necessary. And the overwhelming majority of the dollars that we spend in housing are just being redirected from federal dollars that come in. So the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, almost all of its budget comes from the federal government and comes from HUD. And all of the programs that they use have to follow HUD guidelines. Even the programs that we build onto them where we're adding state dollars, it's almost all just to leverage federal guidelines. So we can't address this gap because federal guidelines do not allow people to be eligible for those programming dollars.
But we also generate money in the state of Michigan, as you know, through taxes, fees, fines, penalties, etc. Why can't we use some state funds for these initiatives, particularly in communities where there has been a history, like you just said, like Detroit, of redlining?
Yeah, this year is really the first year that we're going to have any real dollars to be talking about those kind of things. Okay. It just has not been able to get prioritized because Republicans have been in control of the Senate and House for such a long period of time, and they do not care about this issue. And it would require significant dollars that we haven't. And so we've been trying to plus up the school aid budget. We were trying to attract and maintain some of the businesses that are necessary to do this. And so we're just now moving into a space where housing is a part of the real discussion. And so we added $100 million from some of the federal relief that we got last year. But as we talk about this space, housing has been on the back burner because so much of it comes from federal dollars.
I see, and you don't think a shift in priorities by the governor and within the legislature itself, I mean, the Republicans aside, by the Democrats, could make a difference in this regard?
Democrats can't do this alone. And so again,
I know that.
As we talk about housing, housing is overwhelmingly a federal issue. And so when we talk about where the state has been trying to spend money, it's on schools, because schools are overwhelmingly a local issue. And so we've been able to do pretty significant and substantial investments in schools addressing the equity gap.
Speaking of that, in Detroit, we have less than 50,000 kids in public schools. But you've allocated, $500 million for the school system? Why?
So The way
You know what? I actually think it would be better if each kid had an individual tutor, just like they do at the University of Michigan when they play football up there. I have friends of mine who played up there, and if you're a football player, you get a tutor, a PhD student. If you're taking math, you have a PhD student in math tutor you. If you have English, PhD student. That's how they keep the
That's
team
awesome.
together. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, why are we investing in bricks and mortar when it's minds that we're trying to
you have to do
address?
both. You can't send kids to schools that are falling
Harvard
apart.
hasn't been rebuilt,
Yes,
and
it
it's
has.
too much. They have new buildings.
Harvard has some of the newest and most up-to-date facilities of any school in the world.
And
I mean,
Penn.
they spend billions of dollars, or they have an endowment, in the billions to ensure that they have the highest quality facilities. When we talk about why students do or do not attend schools, so much of it has to do with the facilities. Parents do not want to send their kids to schools that are crumbling or falling in, that don't have adequate air conditioning.
I don't agree with you, and I say that because I went to Catholic school for 12 years, and we were in one building. We didn't have any of the facilities that no track, no football, none of that stuff. We went to school from 8 to 3:30 every day. Attendance was taken in mass. I'm just finished. The emphasis for education has to be on education. It can't be on, bricks and mortar and glitz. And I said I went to Penn. Penn is an Ivy League school, as you know, just like Harvard. We pay them and everything. And the emphasis there is not on building new and shiny. It's on developing minds and people, and on excellent instructors, and on maintaining the academic standards. Academics are totally separate from bricks and mortar. And that's what my problem is with Detroit.
I would say that they aren't. So I went to Cornell, and when we talk about facilities, facilities matter, and facilities are important. And when we talk about those institutions, there is a reason that they look the way that they do. They are not in cookie cutter buildings. They are not in cookie cutter facilities. They are in world-class facilities
That
and
were built 100 years ago.
No, some of them.
Most of them.
No.
And they've been renovated inside because you never change the appearance.
Plenty of them
from
have.
Oxford to every university in London to everywhere else. You don't change the exterior.
Again, when you look, so I can speak to Cornell because I've been back recently. They're constantly building new facilities, and they have glass, and they do all kinds of.
Guess what? They educate people.
They do, but people want to see facilities. You talk about the University of Michigan, you talk about MSU, you talk about Oregon, you talk about Alabama, you talk about any institution. People are recruited to go to those facilities, and parents want to send their kids to buildings that they think their children are going to be safe in and operate in. And that's the same way that we spend dollars, whether it's Grosse Pointe or the city of Detroit. And when we talk about school buildings in the city of Detroit, many of them are 100 years old.
That's great.
They have inadequate ventilation systems. They have all kinds of issues. And certainly I've been a proponent of saving what can be saved. But some of these spaces do need to be rebuilt, and they need new schools and new spaces. And we have to spend the money to ensure the kids are safe in those buildings.
For 50,000 students who in many instances cannot pass national tests, as you know, it appears to me, Adam, no offense to you, and I'd say this to the school board members, I've said it actually to the president, the emphasis cannot be on bricks and mortar. It has to be on brains.
I don't think the emphasis is.
It is. If it's $500 billion being spent on this big shiny building, I was just in Mumford the other day. I remember when it was a blue building, a blue marshmallow building over there. I took driver's training over there because I was at Catholic school. We didn't have driver's training. We didn't have a pool. We didn't have all that stuff. But we had real school for 7 hours a day. So no, I'm just saying. So they have a great big shiny building. I was in the cafeteria. I was registering kids to vote. Me and Councilwoman Angela Calloway from this district, District 2. And I didn't see a single book. Hold on. It gets worse. They have all the space, way too much space for the number of students that they have, quite frankly, that's true for every school now in Detroit. There was no urgency with respect to education, no discussion by the kids. I mean, it was amazing to me.
I think, again, I'm running for Congress. There's very little that a member of Congress does in a school. And as we talk about the emphasis that we've had on school, there's no space more where everyone thinks that they are an expert in education. I don't. Right?
Me neither.
The educators have made it abundantly clear that they need better facilities. Parents have made it abundantly clear that they are going to demand better facilities if they're going to send their children to those buildings. As we talk about how we solve the issues around education, so much of them come down to the economic issues, the education of the parents, to the stability to those children at home. I mean, I spend the most time of any school at Pershing High School, and the number of kids who have
Are
been
they tearing that down too?
they are going to tear it down and build a new building.
Yeah.
Because that's what the neighborhood and the community wanted. I certainly was an advocate of trying to save the building, but the cost differential just didn't make sense. And so as we talk about that space, so many of the kids who go to school there have been to 2 or 3 different schools in the same year because parents are jumping around, because they're moving, because they don't have stable housing.
Because they don't have housing. That is the number one
And
reason. That
so,
is the number one reason.
As we talk about
that is correct.
achievement and educational attainment, I think we have to stop acting like there's some silver bullet or like people aren't all invested, right? Like teachers are working as hard as they can. Parents are working as hard as they can. Everybody is trying to do everything that they can. It just isn't enough yet. And until we figure out.
So we just keep throwing money at it.
Yes. Until we
But
can.
the real issue is how smart. Can I pass a reading test? Can I pass a math test? That is the only issue when it comes to education.
But every issue is the same, right? Like you can't say that housing isn't the issue, because I'll be honest. When I am a hungry kid, I'm paying less attention. So as we talk about why it's so important for kids to get breakfast and lunch, and maybe dinner, right?
I got all that.
Housing, right? Like, so we've got to take all of these other things into context for children and to say, hey, we're going to address every single one of them. As a member of Congress, housing is the thing that I want to work on. It's the thing that I think we can make the biggest difference on. And I think it makes the biggest impact in kids and their lives because it gives them something stable to build from.
I agree with you about the importance of housing, but for years, Adam, I have thought, quite frankly, in the city of Detroit and most other urban areas, we need boarding schools. I don't agree with the big shiny bricks and mortar stuff. What they need, kids need, because my friends in London who are lawyers and so forth, and yours in Europe, as you know, kids overseas go to boarding school. They leave home on Sunday evening. Lawyers, friends of mine in London, the kids leave at 5:00 on Friday. I mean, I'm sorry, 5:00 on Sunday. They go to school. They come home Friday evening at 5:00 on the train. You know, they take trains in Europe. They don't drive everywhere like we do here. Have on their uniform and all that stuff. It's the structure. Children learn from structure, not from bricks and mortar. Because I get back to school on Sunday night. I have dinner. I fool around. I'm lights out at 9:00. 6:00 in the morning, lights on. Got to make up my bed. I got to go to breakfast. Got to do this. And I'm in school. And then I have, they have sports, they have all that soccer, all that stuff that they play over there and everything. They have all these things that they do. And then everything is right there, but they have the structure. That's how kids learn. Kids learn from pure, unadulterated structure and having expectations. All kids will learn. That is why the prince of we're talking about your country. The princes, the sheiks, the kings, the queens have their kids in boarding school, not because they couldn't have somebody come in and just teach them personally.
I'm not saying that it doesn't work. Education is a highly specialized thing. Every kid learns differently. Kids need options. And as you talk about that, there are programs that have boarding schools.
We need boarding schools in Detroit because our families are single parent families. Even when they're 2-parent families like you and your wife, many times if she's working at the law firm, at my law firm, she may have to work super late, or you're in the legislature, you may have to go all night. So, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, there is a reality to life right now. Most parents, most families are 2-parent, if they're a 2-family household, although they're not, because 80% of African-American families right now are single parent households. So having said that, you just cannot balance everything in life and work and keep a roof over everybody's head and do everything you got to do and address school issues. So that's why I think boarding school would be ideal. As a matter of fact, Jim Holly, who's the chairman of our board, is an advocate for it. I mean, I've been this way for 30 years because I realized it.
There's nothing wrong with the boarding school. I think people need options, and that is the right option for some kids. It won't be the right option for others.
It is the right option if you don't have anybody at your house, and if you don't, and if you can't do it. 100%. I mean, it just is what it is.
We need more options, and when you talk about all those spaces, that's why it's so important to ensure that there is equitable funding so that students get the education they need, right? And so, your
emphasis though is on bricks and mortar. My emphasis is on their brain.
No.
I would rather, as I said, for them to have an individual tutor.
You ain't never heard me say that I am emphasizing bricks and mortar, or even that the state is. We have to do both.
$500 million for bricks and mortar,
and we spend way
in the city of Detroit for 50,000 students.
But we spend way more on educating kids. the per pupil allotment, we spend way more.
If we spend $1 million on that family, we could probably get a better education for the student.
And
Or
in
50
many
or
ways
500,000.
in many ways that we
We're
do.
not making sense.
See, the both of you are right. Like, housing is really, really important.
I agree.
That is really, really important. And a lot of families do actually,
agree.
they they're doing all of this so that they can basically have a house for them and their families. And this is the most difficult thing here in Michigan. It really is.
I agree.
But you're also right about the boarding school. But we do also need to have like different options for different people, because not everyone functions the same way.
I understand.
We all have like different frequencies. Operate on different frequencies. But like that's going to be cost effective too, like boarding schools.
Very cost effective when you look at the juvenile rate and everything else that's happening, and it's easier for parents to get themselves together.
Right.
If I know I'm going to see my kid every weekend and that he's safe, he or she is safe, and they're learning, and there's no TV after 10 o'clock at night, no TV after 9 o'clock at night. Your butt's up at 6 a.m. You're going to be exercising. You got to clean up your room. That gives me comfort.
Yeah,
that
definitely.
is important.
Definitely.
And they can't get that at home right now. Kids go to school with potato chips. Their hair is totally uncombed. Not your kid, but I mean, they stop at the gas station and no, they stop at the gas station and eat potato chips on the way to school. Their hair is uncombed. They're slovenly in many instances in terms of their appearance and so forth. And now I guess they're getting ready to go back to uniforms here in a minute. But I'm just saying everything is. I mean, it just kids survive in your house, because of structure. They have, and the American family right now, single parent household, do not have that structure. They just don't, for the most part, unless they have a lot of money, or unless they have there's no such thing as a grandmother living in and all that stuff. That's all over, because nobody's doing that anymore. But that's what's important. That's all I'm saying. So if you're going to address the issue with kids and housing, and I think you do have to address the issue of education, but I think it has to be an alternative education style. It's not based on bricks and mortar for me. I just isn't.
I mean, I don't know who is saying that it's based
I know.
on bricks and
I keep saying that. I apologize. That's not fair to you. Okay. So you want to do something about housing. Are there any other initiatives that you have that you'd like to,
Well, I think, one of the things that I'm excited about and continuing to work on it is access to the ballot, right? And so as we talk about over the last couple of years, the ability to vote, we made additional protections in 2018 when we passed Prop 2 so that you could vote same day, that you had no reason absentee balloting and things like that. And you saw way more people vote. You saw the highest participation that we've had in years in the 2020 election. And a lot of it was because people had no reason absentee ballot. And at the federal level,
had no reason absent. Oh, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that 100%.
And also same day registration to be automatically registered to vote whenever you go into the Secretary of State for any other thing. So if you go in and update your address or changing those kind of things, it automatically registers you to vote.
I like
so
that
people have access to the ballot, because it should be easy to participate in our democracy. And we have got to do way more things, because it shouldn't be easier or harder depending upon what state you come from, which is why it's so important that at the federal level, we make a lot more parity between state to state. So in some states, you have to, go in person to register to vote. And the only place you can do that in the Secretary of State might be 2 or 3 hours away, which is often the case in the state of Texas. So there are some places where it's harder or easier to vote. There are places across the country, and we've got to level that playing field, because Black people are disproportionately the most likely to be negatively impacted by these voter suppression bills, by the legislation that has been passed all across the country in response to 2020, in response to the big lie in these kind of spaces, and have been pushing back against those kind of things. The next thing is we've really got to continue to emphasize our role in the electric vehicle space. It's going to be the future. It is the present.
I agree with that.
And if we don't transition, if we aren't in the leadership in that space, it's going to hugely impact Michigan's economy, because right now we are heavily reliant on the auto industry. And I know a lot of people will say that they don't see, they don't work for the auto industry, but your job is here because of the auto industry.
Correct.
Because of that factory, because of, the ad agency that you work for. A substantial portion of their business goes into autos. And so you take that away, and so does your job. And so we've got to really make sure that this transition to electric vehicles allows us the innovation around everything else, because that's what's coming. right?
Well, I agree with you about that. I agree 100% about that. And I think the automotive companies are doing that in a very effective way. They are moving, they're making their trucks electric and everything else. But the infrastructure in the country does not yet support electric vehicles, not even close.
Which is why we've got to build it out.
Well,
And it's
we
going to
need to
happen.
build out the infrastructure anyway.
Well,
frankly.
the last set of infrastructure we did was a great investment, except
Right.
it was,
Right.
80, 90 years ago. And so when we talk about the last highway system we built was the Dwight Eisenhower National Defense
Right,
Highway
right.
System, right? I think we're in a moment where we have to build an electrical grid that is similarly designed and that has data that provides for not just charging stations and charging systems, but also for the access to broadband internet that does not exist today. Because that's going to be critically important as we talk about the transition to one day autonomous vehicles, but also the connectivity that people need to be able to participate in our world. And it has to be done in a way that's safe and secure, right? The growing threat of cyber attacks continues to impact folks. And it's not just your system that has to be safe, it's the system itself that data is moving through underlying that's
Oh, I
got to be
agree.
protected.
I've been the victim of a cyber attack, so I
That's
understand
probably the
more than
Russians.
once.
And how long is it going to
It
take?
might have
to
been.
build?
Might have been.
How long is it going to take?
Yeah.
It depends on how much we invest in and how quickly. But it's going to take years.
Yeah, it's going to take a couple of decades, I would think.
So it's not going to take a decade. If we need to,
We don't have the money.
we absolutely have the money,
We're $30 trillion in debt as we speak here today.
and that's how you get it back. So investments in infrastructure are taking on debt. That's what you do. That is a good debt. It's something that we should do every single time. It's like investing in your business. You borrow money so you can build your business. Yes, you go into debt, but you do it with the expectation that it's going to lead to a strong return on your investment. And every dollar we invest in infrastructure and those systems pays back in big fold because it spurs innovation and the kind of manufacturing and growth that our country needs,
In the meantime, you have to be able to pay that debt service.
which we absolutely can.
We absolutely can't right now.
We have no issues paying the debt service.
We're paying China every day, every month, right, for the debt because they're the ones who loan us the money.
Everyone loans and borrows money. China is able to do what China does because they artificially lower the value of their currency to promote their export business. So they're just as reliant on our space as anyone else. And just the same way China buys American debt, so do we buy the debt of other people.
That's absolutely true. We always have. And we've always supported other governments in that regard. And I guess that brings me to, I agree with your everything that you've said in terms of the fact that we're moving towards a more technological environment, that we will obviously ultimately probably move to electric cars. But as you know, we had this option when Henry Ford built the first car. We knew how to build cars then that were not reliant just on fossil fuel, but they made a choice to go to support the oil industry and to build cars that were reliant on fossil fuel. So it'll be interesting to see how that all transports. In terms of the district, your district, tell us about it.
Yeah, so right now I represent the 2nd Senate District, which is where we're at, just south of where we are right now. It's all 5 gross points going east to west, Harper Woods, the northeast side of the city of Detroit. So basically everything east of 94 going into the north end, Boston Edison, Midtown, diving all the way down into southwest Detroit. The new 13th Congressional District goes almost to Wyoming. It's split halfway between Wyoming and Livernois. Goes down into southwest Detroit, downriver, western Wayne. So it goes Lincoln Park, Allen Park, River Rouge, Romulus, Taylor, Wayne, a little bit of Dearborn Heights, Southgate, Wyandotte.
Okay, so that's the new district
That's
that
the
you're
new
going
13th
to. Okay,
district.
And obviously part of that district is yours already. Most of it,
About a third of it.
Yeah, that's what I understood. I've been reading about it and everything.
Yep. So I represent about as much of the new 13th as either Congresswoman Lawrence, Tlaib, or Dingle.
Okay, so how would you benefit that district, or voting for you? How would that help that district, in your opinion?
I think, again, I always talk about what I have done. So as a state senator in the last 4 years, I've been one of the most effective legislators. I've gotten a bill signed into law every year. I sit on the Appropriations Committee, where I brought $13 million back to my Senate district in last year's budget alone. Right. So not over the entire course of the time, but just in last year. And I think that that's important because we should be expecting things to come back to the district.
I agree.
And that's what I've been able to do, getting, programs like Focus Hope and Flip the Script, the Goodwill program, the Motown Museum funded. getting additional dollars for DPSCD and their JROTC program, being a fierce advocate for some of the kind of things that are necessary for our spaces, getting money to the Michigan Minority Supplier Development Council to ensure that Black businesses are leading the development and moving forward. As we talk about being able to be a part of the transition to electric vehicles and manufacturing, and I think I can continue to expand on that work in a way that is, a benefit of my legislative history, right? DC is moving to the next level, and I think it's important to have experience at the last one. We started this off about talking about football. The best football players in the pros were great football players in college.
Correct.
You don't see this space where someone's like, I've never played football before. I think I'm going to be great at this. It's like, yes, there are some people who, kind of have a unique story, but you can't think of a single Hall of Famer who didn't play college football and who wasn't able to be successful at that other level. And when we look out at the 13th Congressional District, my record in the state legislature is clear, and I would put it up against anyone else.
That's wonderful. What would you expect of your congressman if Adam was your congressperson? Jesus.
Honestly, I'm a very technological person. So what you're, you definitely got my vote, because that's what I really, really want to see out here. I want to see more technology. We have it. We're just not, and another thing, it's thinking of ways of saving the earth and, saving our environment. And that's the most important thing. Recycling, that's a big thing. And that's what we need to do more of. And, we're in 2022. That's it. We're in this generation to move forward to this technological world. And, even though it's we lost a lot of people for COVID-19, but it literally shifted people to think on a technological level, because they have to use Zoom, they have to use technology to communicate with each other. And it's the same thing with the cars. Having electrical cars out here is really important, and just having the right equipment for them to function on a right level. It's really important. So you definitely got my vote for sure.
See there, it makes a difference. Your initiatives and goals, and that's wonderful. It's the way it ought to be, because you have big shoes to fill with John Kinders,
and no one can fill him alone, right? It took him, half a century to be the man that he was. And as we talk about who we're going to be able to replace that space, no one can do it all by themselves. We can just hope to grow into it. And at 36, I'm about the same age that he was when he went to Congress, and he was able to become the man he was meant to be over decades of service. And I think it's important to understand that in a space where seniority matters, you got to have somebody who is young enough and strong enough to get into a position to be powerful, and then to wield that power. Because he didn't just ascend to a position, he ascended to a space and was able to then do things while he was in those positions.
But his commitment was always to civil rights and to equal justice. It took him 13 years to get the Martin Luther King Day a resolution passed. So now we have a Martin Luther King Day national holiday. He would be in it not only, well, his seniority was important in terms of that, obviously, but he had core goals and core values related to Black people and related to the African American community, and that's really what he stood for across the country, as he would go from California to here to New York, everywhere else. He was a humble person, and he had his value. He led based on his values.
And his values were jobs, justice, and peace. And I think when you have folks like him and Dr. Martin Luther King, people forget that the first thing that they talked about was jobs. Correct. People want to talk about justice because we can all agree with justice, but when you start talking about jobs, it makes people have to address the fundamental inequities that they are unwilling to deal with. It means paying somebody a livable wage. It means helping them be in a union. It means supporting the kind of things that allow them to put a roof over their kids' home. That's the important part.
But you could only do that if you have an education. That's my point. Yeah. So it's what's between this ear and this ear that lets me be able to get those jobs.
100%.
And that is where I said earlier, the emphasis has to be on developing brains and minds and having the structure in which kids can learn effectively. I really do believe that. And I think we're falling so far behind. And I know, based on what I assume that you have a great deal of union support for your campaign.
Every union that has endorsed me in this race,
including the teachers union.
We're working on it. They haven't come out yet, but I'm hoping. They supported me when I ran for the Senate the last time. I was a member of AFT when I was in grad school. I was my union steward. So
Yeah, I understand labor very well. I argued and won three precedent-setting labor cases in the Michigan Supreme Court. So I understand where you're coming from, and I've been a big supporter of unions. But I can't support the teachers union after closing the schools in Michigan for almost 2 years. And I say that because not a single private school closed, not Roper, not Country Day, not any of the Catholic schools, and nobody just passed out and died. I mean, it was, and it hurt my community. It hurt those kids I saw at Mumford last week. Ooh, I mean, it's unbelievable. You, Adam, if you're in these schools or Jesus, you'll see it. You can. It's unbelievable. It's like, where is the education?
I think teachers had an incredibly difficult task
I
last
agree with
year,
that.
and I think they were all doing the very best that they could under the circumstances that they were in. And having been in a number of those schools, having been trying to help them as we talk about
Mhm.
facilities, the ventilation, the class
Oh,
size, and
come
like,
on.
I mean,
Catholic schools are much smaller than in single public. You can't find a
they have
Catholic
smaller,
school
they have
that
smaller class sizes.
no, they don't.
Yes, they
No,
do.
they don't. No, they really don't. There were 32 kids in my class. I remember. We all had just like a, but that's not the point. The point is again gets back to your customer. It, businesses close. I mean, it didn't make any sense to me, and it only happened because of the fact that everybody could get paid and not work. And you and I both know that
I
because
don't.
well, you need to look at the Spanish flu of 1917, where there were only 103 million Americans. um, 800,000 people died. Only 103. 800,000 people died in that flu. At that time, there was no Social Security. There were no pensions. There were no food stamps, no housing assistance, no nothing. No, the economy did not stop. Everybody still went to school. Everybody still went to work. This is how people act when they don't get paid to just be at home. I'm just telling the truth. You can check it out. 1917, 800,000 people died, 103 million Americans, which was way more on a comparative basis than what happened in this. And because it was so poorly handled, we didn't put the emphasis on the people who needed it. There were only two groups that were largely at risk, as we both know: people with pre-existing conditions like diabetes or some serious, or people who were over 70.
Well, if that's your kid,
That's the truth.
if that's the argument you're making, then it would only make sense that Black folks who are much more likely to have pre-existing conditions, to much more likely to have those issues. And you saw, especially early in the pandemic, we're seeing far more worse results as a result of the pandemic. That schools would have been closed and people would have been isolated
For 3 weeks. You're right. And until you understood it and what was going on, just like all the other schools, all I can tell you, Adam, is that Governor Newsom, who closed all the schools in California, his kids went to private school the next day. I mean, it either is unsafe or it isn't. And if it's not really unsafe, then you keep working, you keep on pushing, and you make the adjustments that you have to make.
I don't walk into the court and tell the attorneys what to do. I don't walk into the CDC and tell them what to do. I follow directions as the experts say on their expertise.
That's not true.
That is how I operate in the world.
I understand how you operate. I'm just saying.
When my commander says,
right,
when my subject matter
right,
expertise
when you're
says,
commander, right, I got that.
I respect I respect experts and expertise.
Okay.
And when we talk about how we deal with a global pandemic, if more people had followed the guidance that the CDC and those who spend every waking moment of their lives preparing for this, we would have been in a better situation. We would be in a better situation today.
Well, I disagree with you about that because I say that because Johns Hopkins University has put out a tremendous report on all the things that the CDC did wrong and how America handled it inappropriately. And I really have confidence in them, more so than Dr. What's his name. But anyway, I'm going to wish you the best in terms of this campaign. You certainly have my support. Obviously, you have Jesus' support.
Of course.
Is there
that. Having Jesus' support sounds really
well. Oh, doesn't it though? You got her support.
Yeah.
Yes.
You convinced her sitting right here.
Yeah, definitely.
But okay. Any final words you'd like to make since we got to close here?
If folks want to get more information, they can go to my website, Adam Ollier for Congress. That's ADAMHOLLIERFORCONGRESS.com.
Thank you for joining us on WJZZ Cool TV. Here with us today, Jesus. Jesus, I forgot your last name was
Washington.
Washington. I like Washington, the state. Right, I got you.
Yes.
I'm sorry, and of course our senator Adam Holier. I'm attorney Linda Bernard. Thank you for joining us again on Chop It Up here at WJZZ Cool TV. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.